All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We're delighted to state that this is the first ever inaugural meeting of the Legislative and External Affairs Advisory Committee. My name is Mark Bontrager. I have the honor of serving as the chair of the committee. I want to begin by thanking each of you for your time, commitment, and willingness to serve in this important advisory capacity. Your insight and engagement will be key in helping us shape thoughtful, responsive, and forward-looking external strategies and legislative efforts. Before we take roll, I want to offer Vice Chair Callan the opportunity to say some opening remarks.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm just honored to be a part of this new collaborative and transparent process. And I just also wanted to thank the staff for all their amazing work in putting this together. It's quite amazing. Thank you.
And I want to echo those comments. I do appreciate the help, support, and guidance from our staff in making this happen. Now we will take roll and establish a quorum, but please note that under the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act, any commissioners who are participating remotely, which there are some, must keep their camera on at all times, and we will be asking you during roll call to disclose if you have any other adults in the room over the age of 18 and the nature of your relationship with these individuals. Krisangi?
Commissioner Fairweather?
I'm here and there are no adults in the room.
Thank you.
Or anyone.
Commissioner Larson?
Present.
Commissioner Mitchell? Noting absent. Commissioner Southard?
I am present and alone in my room.
Commissioner Thomas Beckett? Noting absent. Committee Chair Bontrager?
I'm here.
Present. Committee Vice Chair Callan?
Present.
We have 5 present so we can establish quorum.
Thank you. So we're now moving on to agenda item 2, announcements. And there are a number of them, so please indulge me as I read through them in order to ensure that I cover each one of the announcements. I want to recognize that today is Juneteenth, a federal holiday that marks the emancipation of the last enslaved African Americans in the United States. It's a day of reflection, remembrance, and a commitment to justice. We recognize this moment in history and the ongoing and unfinished work toward equity. As we begin this work together as a committee, let's hold space for that reflection and remain mindful of how public policy and external engagement can shape more equitable outcomes for the communities we serve. We will be abiding by the Bagley-Keene laws for these meetings, but as part of our commitment to deeper public involvement and open governance, today's meeting of the Legislative and External Affairs Advisory Committee features an enhanced public comment segment designed to promote genuine dialogue between the committee and the community. This new format goes beyond traditional public comment by allowing for open conversation, a space where committee members can respond, ask clarifying questions, and engage constructively with the public. This change fulfills a commitment made by Commission Chair Alvarez to strengthen transparency and create more accessible two-way communication. Whether you're here to raise a concern, share a perspective, or suggest solutions, we want you to feel heard, valued, and part of the process. We look forward to learning from your experiences, collaborating toward better outcomes for our community. We're pleased to announce that the legislature's proposed budget includes continued and increased support for the Mental Health Wellness Act grant program. As part of the legislature's commitment to behavioral health, the program will receive a $10 million funding increase. Importantly, $5 million of that increase is specifically allocated to the support youth-focused substance use disorder services. This outcome reflects strong legislative support for preserving and expanding access to critical behavioral health resources and aligns with the priorities our committee and our partners have continued to advocate for. The legislature's negotiations with the administration are ongoing, but with all the support we have received from our partners, we remain hopeful. In case you missed it, we'd like to remind everyone that the first program committee will be convening in the next couple of weeks and be focused on shaping the new Innovation Partnership Fund. This should be posted to the committee's portion of our website very soon. The Budget Committee will be convening on July 17th from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and will be focusing on the Commission's budget and providing recommendations on annual priorities. Additionally, there will be a virtual Client and Family Leadership Committee and Cultural and Linguistics Competency Committee listening session on July 1st at 3 o'clock. Information can also be found on our website under Committees. Lastly, we will be discussing the development of our transitional age youth advocacy contract later on the agenda. But I also want to announce a listening session for TAY, specifically on June 24th from 10 to 2 p.m. at Sacramento City College Student Center that will help us better understand TAY's needs and experiences related to behavioral health services. For more information, please contact Rianne Kopchak at Behavioral Health Services Act Oversight and Accountability Commission. That concludes the announcements today. Again, I want to welcome everyone to today's meeting, and we will now move on to agenda item number 3, general public comment. This time is reserved for comments on the items that are not on the agenda. And I will ask staff to please lead us in the public comment.
Thank you, Chair Bontrager. If you'd like live meeting transcription or closed captioning, please activate that feature located in the control bar at the top or bottom of your screen. For members of the public, if you have not already, please use one of the green public comment cards located at the front to indicate you would like to make comment on this item and any other agenda item. Cards can be given to staff located at the front table. Members can also email us public comment to be shared at a future meeting at legislation@bhsoac.ca.gov. I will now go over public comment procedure. Once the public comment period for the item starts, please make requests. You may request by raising your hand on the app or on your computer, or if calling in by phone, push *9. We currently have one virtual comment from Stacy.
There's Stacy Hiramoto with REMCO, the Racial and Ethnic Mental Health Disparities Coalition. I just want to congratulate and thank the commission and this committee. REMCO has been advocating for a legislative committee for a long time. You have a fabulous staff, and I cannot wait till you guys get started. I've gone over the materials. They are fantastic. Again, congratulations, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Stacy. That was our last virtual comment. There are also no public comments in the room.
All right, thank you, Mariani. We now move on to agenda item 4, is the overview of the Legislative and External Affairs Committee. This agenda item will ground us in the purpose and the scope of this very committee as established by its formal charter. I'd like to invite Kendra Zoller, Deputy Director of Legislative and External Affairs, to give us a presentation outlining our core purpose. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just wait for the PowerPoint to come up. There we go. Okay. Like the chair said, I will provide an overview of the scope and the purpose of our committee, starting with our commission membership. We have Chair Bontrager, Vice Chair Callan, and we have 5 other members: Fairweather, Larson, Mitchell, Southard, and Thomas Beckett. So we're excited. We actually have 5 new commissioners and 2 veterans, so that is exciting to work on this committee together. In terms of how this committee is staffed and the way that the work flows up through my branch, the Legislative and External Affairs team. We wanted to provide this to the public along with contacts for the managers and supervisors should you have any questions. We are made up of 3 units: communications, legislative and commission planning, and advocacy. I'm the deputy director. Ryan Kopchak is the assistant deputy director, and then we have the chief of communications, Andrea Anderson, and the chief over legislative and external affairs, Danny Fisher, and then we also have our advocacy team. In terms of meeting format and frequency, we can meet completely virtual, but obviously we can also do hybrid like we're doing today, or we can do fully in person. It's up to the members, but always open to the public, either virtually or in person. We are still figuring out our commission meeting calendar for the year, which we should know soon, but the committees, all 3 or all 5 of them, will meet in between the full commission meeting. So this committee will meet every other month or ad hoc as needed. We can call it anytime, as long as we post the agenda 10 days in advance, just like our commission meetings. Committees cannot take action, but we can provide recommendations to the full commission to take action. So that's just a reminder of our authority. And as you heard in announcements, we have this new format for public comment with open dialogue to have more interaction with our stakeholders and partners. Our charter for this committee was approved a few months ago, I believe. And basically, we are have 3 main sort of priorities, and it kind of mimics the setup of the branch. So legislation, engaging with the community, and also all of our advocacy contracts. And what this means in practice is the next slide. So for any items in these areas that require full commission approval, that would be taking legislative positions, sponsoring legislation, developing and executing advocacy contracts for our 9 populations. So that would be like the outlines for the RFPs and also the intent to award. And then we have some other items in our communications and external affairs branch that we don't have any that require action right now, but in the future they will, and they are things that relate to our anti-stigma campaigns that I mention a little later. So for our upcoming year, these are the items that we know the full commission will need to act on. So if we sponsor legislation, we'll need to develop that in the fall. And then obviously the spring of next year is when we'll start taking positions on bills for that legislative session. If we meet again before the end of this legislative session, we can also do that this year. And then for our advocacy contracts, we know that we are developing the one for transition age youth, which you'll hear about next. And then in 2026, we have actually 6 populations that are all on the same schedule, so quite a few that we'll need to work on then. We'll probably stagger those. And then, of course, this committee can also discuss things that don't require action. That's something that we'll have to continue to decide how we'll do this, but we can do things like status updates on legislation, updates on implementation, hear from our advocacy contractors, what are we learning from their, updated reports, and then hear about some of our anti-stigma campaigns in the communications branch, and that includes things like Art with Impact, the KVIE documentary Hiding in Plain Sight, and then our UOP Transformational Change Partnership. And that's it. That's the overview. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kendra. At this time, I want to open it up to fellow commissioners to see if there are any questions. Commissioner Larson?
Thanks so much, Kendra. Happy to be here on our first meeting. Just because I'm a relatively new commissioner, it would be helpful for me to understand how we arrived at the advocacy populations that are outlined on slide 7. And a little bit, the underlying reason for the question is, should we be aligning our advocacy populations with the priority populations within Prop 1?
Good question. So we originally inherited, I don't know how many of the populations from the Department of Mental Health. And then over the years, we added more populations through BCP's budget change proposals that the commission kind of, I believe, did through community engagement, et cetera. So that would be something that this committee could work on if we wanted to propose additional advocacy contracts and trying to get funding for those and mirror them with the BHSA populations.
Thanks.
Any questions from commissioners virtually? Okay. I have a question. So I'm grounded in our role. Our role is really to make recommendations then to the full commission. Can you speak a little bit more about exactly the role of the committees as it relates to the full commission?
Yeah, so I think the action items that I listed are things that we know on the staff level the commission will need to approve in order us to get funds out the door before we lose them. And for example, advocacy, those are 3-year contracts. So the transition age youth, we know that one is ending next year. So we're starting to work on developing the next one. So some things we know we have to do, but then we have freedom to go beyond that to discuss things we might want to bring that are new to the commission. So that could be anything related to advocacy, legislation, and then our communications work, anti-stigma work. The staff is happy to present on all these things, and we can discuss what we want to do. It's kind of a new frontier.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners in the room or online? Go ahead.
I might be jumping the gun because we may be discussing it later in the agenda, but sort of the process by which legislation that we should be looking at is brought to our attention. I mean, we could all do our own legislative research, or if the staff will be sort of pulling items that relate to mental health and behavioral health and substance.
Yes, we are discussing that a little later on, but yes, absolutely, we're going to do that in partnership with all of our stakeholders and community too.
Any further comments or questions from our commissioners? Okay, thank you. Mariani, I will ask you to go ahead and open up the lines for public comment.
Okay, great. We have one comment from Stacy.
Hi, Stacy Hiramoto again. It was my understanding that there was going to be, and maybe it's already scheduled, some meetings, or at least one meeting to get community feedback on the advocacy grants. The advocacy grants were changed dramatically by the executive director of the commission, and the purpose and the focus and the parameters of the grant. And it's just, it was my understanding that there was going to be some discussion about that. Anyway, I think it's important because the original purpose of the grant, I felt was very important. And that was frankly to focus advocacy a lot at the state level. And then after the commission took over, that was highly discouraged, and it was not even, you could not bill for that. And then that loosened up a bit which was great. But, and it's not that I'm against advocacy at the local level, but these kinds of issues were never discussed with the public stakeholders. So I'm hoping that this can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. In the spirit of this more open dialogue, Kendra, do you want to provide some more
Yes,
feedback?
I think you'll hear a little bit more about our plans in the next presentation. But yes, we have some listening sessions coming up on specifically the TAY advocacy contract, but also this will be a space to work with you and others on how we develop these. So we're happy to have those conversations.
Okay, if we are done, then we have Laurel, a comment from Laurel.
Good morning and congratulations on your first meeting. I wanted to second what Stacy said, and I also wanted to ask if you, or what the path would be, the approach would be if in a legislative session, one of the members or a community member or organization feels that a particular bill that's been proposed by some legislator is particularly good or particularly relevant or maybe particularly bad and needs to be brought to the attention of the committee and the commission. What will be the procedure going on? And you may not be able to answer that today, but I think it's an important question going forward, especially with your new community-friendly approach. Thank you. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm sorry. I just came in from the heat. I'm Laurel Ben Hamida from Muslim American Society Social Services Foundation and REMCO.
Thank you, Laurel.
I believe our intention is to get a little more deeper into that conversation later here in the agenda, but I appreciate you bringing that forward. Kendra, is there anything you wanted to add to that? Okay, thank you.
Those were our last two comments.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to agenda item 5, the advocacy spotlight. As highlighted in Kendra's presentation, a key part of the committee's scope is to support and collaborate with the Commission's advocacy contracts and contractors. These contracts are staggered, each operating on different terms. Currently, the Commission is in the early stages of developing the request for proposals, the RFP outlined for transitional age youth, the advocacy contract, which is set to expire on June 30, 2026. The goal is to bring a draft of the RFP outline to the full commission for review and approval in October. Right now, staff are prioritizing the community engagement phase of this process to ensure the new contract reflects the lived experience, stakeholder priorities, and emerging needs in the TAY space. At this time, I'd like to welcome Lester Rabancho. Am I saying that correctly, Rabancho?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
I mean, as an individual who gets my last name butchered all the time, I'm sincerely interested. Okay. So go ahead, Lester.
Great. Thank you, Committee Chair Bontrager and Commissioners. My name is Lester Rabancho, and I'm staff with the Commission. I'm going to provide a quick overview of our advocacy contracts and then move into some updates on our current work in the advocacy program. So the kind of a refresh here. So the state legislature authorizes the commission to fund community-based organizations to support the behavioral health needs of underserved populations through advocacy, training and education, and outreach and engagement. We award these funds typically through competitive requests for proposals, and we award contracts to the highest scorers. Our advocacy contracts are typically awarded for 3 years of services. And the goal of this funding is to really uplift the voices of our underrepresented communities and to empower communities to participate in the local and state decision-making processes. The 9 underserved populations that the Commission currently funds for advocacy include consumers, diverse racial and ethnic communities, families of consumers, immigrant and refugee populations, K through 12 students, LGBTQ plus communities, parents and caregivers, veteran communities, and transition age youth. So that's a total of 9 populations. And some of the photos there are from actual events or engagements that we've had with our current advocacy partners. So an update to the work on the transition age youth advocacy. So as mentioned before, with the TAY contract ending next year, we have begun an extensive community engagement process to inform our next RFP. That community engagement includes several meetings with between Commission staff and statewide agencies who work with TAY to get a better sense of how they engage youth. We will also be holding our listening session next Tuesday at Sacramento City College to hear directly from TAY on their thoughts on what advocacy and getting involved means to them. We'll be simultaneously be pushing out an online survey to gather further data and further data on TAY insights. And in July, we plan to hold one more listening session on Zoom to reach more youth. We're also going to be taking this opportunity to change and update the way we approach advocacy. So in past procurements, our advocacy contractors primarily engage communities through events and facilitated meetings between the public and decision makers. We're recognizing that it's probably time to maybe update our approach a little bit. And so through this community engagement for the TAY contract, we're also gathering input on how to do advocacy differently. And we're starting to lean more towards an approach that focuses more on empowerment and organizing voice of these populations so that they can advocate for themselves. And we aim to have this new approach kind of established by the time the TAY RFP is released next year. Going to look over to Chair Ryan Kopchak to see if she had any did you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Lester. I just wanted to add that we're taking this opportunity with the TAY to kind of do our initial community engagement, recognizing that each population might need a different approach for advocacy, right? And so we really want to engage different partners that we have currently and partners that we have used in the past, as well as other community organizations, state experts, departments, and all of our allies. And so we will also have a collaboration meeting with all of our advocacy contractors. That is next Wednesday, June 25th. And we're going to talk about this with our current, all of our populations being represented. And then we will engage in some, as Stacy mentioned, she was wondering about community engagement with everyone, and we will engage in some of those meetings as well. Because we want to find out from the communities, like what's the best way to approach advocacy so that we can go more from a activity-based goal to an actual impact role. But the biggest challenge that we're finding is how do you measure impact of advocacy? And so that's one kind of our big goals is to try to figure that out with everybody else giving their input as well.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So from there, we're going to move into our updates on our immigrant and refugee RFP. Let's see. So the other population that we're...
Lester, excuse me.
Yes.
Can we entertain some questions first before we move on to the other RFP?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Commissioner?
Thanks. I don't want to forget what I wanted to ask, and I'm old enough that I tend to forget what I'm about to ask. You'll probably notice a theme in the questions I ask or the comments I have. So as we're thinking about this transition age youth advocacy RFP, I would encourage us to think about Prop 1 and the priority populations within that. And so as we're thinking about transition age youth, I would think we should be focusing on advocacy for those exiting foster care or reentering the community from a carceral setting or at risk of or experiencing homelessness. Or having substance use issues, right? Like those populations don't seem to be highlighted in most of the slides we have today or the advocacy kind of contracts that we have been awarding. And so I would just encourage us to remember our charge in this new world and the new priority populations and focuses of Prop 1.
Thank you, Commissioner Larson.
I have a follow-up question, and this is more out of my own ignorance, and that is, I assume, but maybe I'm wrong, there's some sort of, just like we have evidence-based practices, is there a best practice when it comes to engagement, when it comes to advocacy and empowerment? And if so, is that part of our design or our lit review, et cetera?
I think, so what we found is that depending on the population of the community, the approach is different. And so we found with youth specifically, there are best practices that kind of revolve around not having adults in the room and making sure that we're not, there's a big tokenism perception with youth often. And so to answer your question, the best practices tend to change with the populations, and we keep getting new input each time we have these engagement events or activities, and so I don't think we have really something established. Ryan, do you think we have anything?
No, I think it's a great question, and that's why we are continually engaging the communities and then those CBOs that are experts in those communities. You know, just as an example, what we're hearing right now in our immigrant and refugee community and their concerns and their struggles is wildly different from what we're hearing in the TAY population. And so we are really relying on our partners to give us that feedback. And with TAY specifically, what we heard was go and meet them where they're at. And so that's why we're doing some of our community engagement at, Sacramento City College. And to Commissioner Larson's question earlier, we have invited iFoster to partner with us there. And we're also doing some engagement across the state with some of those at-risk CBO populations that are subpopulations of our advocacy grant to focus on the needs. I know Commissioner Wilkes is also helping us connect with unhoused youth. And so we are focusing on those specific subpopulations and actually into our grants and RFAs writing that over 50 or up to 50% of their activities are required to address Pop 1 and those populations that are, listed in Proposition 1. So just wanted to kind of rest assured that we are giving a lot of attention to their needs as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Update on the immigrant and refugee. Our current cohort of immigrant and refugee contractors are due to end this year. 4 local organizations will be ending their contracts on June 30th, and the other 4 local organizations and the statewide organization will be completing their services on September 30th. Back in April, after a long procurement and scoring process, we announced our intent to award 7 local organizations as part of the new cohort of contractors, and these contracts are being finalized right now, and they should be signed and executed by the end of this month. The statewide organization RFP is also being finalized, and this is expected to be released sometime in July. We will receive we'll receive proposals for the typical procurement time, which is about a month, a little over a month. And then we will score the proposals and announce an awardee around September. And I'm giving a lot of tentative general dates, but the dates will be final once the RFP is released. So that's where we're at with the immigrant and refugee organizations.
Just to expand on that a bit, the reason why we have different sets of contracts for this population is that there was a recognized need in California because there is such a high percentage of our population here in this community. We have actual 2 awards for this. So whereas our other populations have 670,000 a year available, this population has double that amount, which is what, 13, I can't do math, 1340, right around there. And so we do a local advocacy contract and then we do a statewide. So there's actually 2 awards in this population.
So I have a question then is, given the current situation, I wonder if there's any idea of expanding the funding perhaps for this contract, because we're obviously in a crisis as we have not seen for quite some time.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Southard. In order to expand funding, we would have to get an award from the legislature through a budget change proposal. And those things are typically done like a full year in advance. And so any request that we would make currently would be considered over the next year and then not awarded until July of 2026. So, yeah.
Are there any provisions for emergency funding? Because I know in the past, sometimes those have happened.
Not that I'm aware of currently. We would certainly
Okay.
love to explore if there were.
Thank you.
I think you answered my question, that this is the only grant where there are both local level and state level grants. Is that the case?
It's not the only grant where we have taken that approach. We've taken that approach with our K-12 advocacy, but this is the only population that we actually have 2 full allocations to give towards this community.
Okay. And then just to piggyback on Commissioner Larson's comment about populations, I think, we can also think about the intersectionality. So, within each of the populations that are kind of, identity based, that within that to prioritize the people whose status is homeless or at risk of incarceration or reentry. And I guess similarly, within some of the other groups, there would be, inclusive of LGBTQ and to sort of, cross-pollinate some of the activities, between the advocacy communities.
Absolutely. And this is something that Lester and I have been working on to have our advocacy grantees and contractors collaborating together on best approaches, which is why we just started, I think this will be our 2nd learning collaborative, where we invite all of our contractors together. They used to be very siloed contracts and grants, and now we invite them all to come together. We do virtual and in person. We kind of alternate, and we have them talk to each other about the needs of their populations, recognizing that, as you said, someone may be a member of multiple communities, and those approaches should be kind of integrated in order to provide the best service and care and support for these folks.
You had mentioned that you're trying to identify how you can measure impact here. That to me sounds like a pretty tough nut to crack. It's kind of hard to measure how, the value of someone to be, of being heard from groups who probably historically haven't been heard from. Any sense of your approach, or are there models out there where they've measured impacts of advocacy grants?
In talking to local CBOs, they're having the same issue. We, as a commission, we used to view it as interactions with policymakers, and that was how we kind of judged if our grants were successful or not. We're realizing that that doesn't necessarily translate into everyone's daily life. So someone in the immigrant refugee community who's struggling with language access with healthcare providers may not feel like a meeting with their city councilman is their best advocacy approach. So we're really trying to find a way to combine all of that together. And that's something that we're really hoping comes out of these community engagements and discussions that we're being very intentional with in the community. Lester, did you have anything?
Yeah, I want to just add to that as well. Over the years, we've been asking our advocacy contractors, how do we measure advocacy? And the answer is usually that there isn't a straight answer. Advocacy is it's very subjective, and it is hard to measure. So in addition to what Ryan mentioned, we also take into account qualitative data. So stories and testimonies from the actual community members that have been impacted by the work. And so I wanted to add that as well. And so I think hopefully through this community engagement and this development of this RFP, we can maybe solidify a more streamlined sort of procedure or model that we can use to measure advocacy based on the needs of that population. So yeah, I just wanted to add that too.
I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I just have a question regarding the contracts that are expiring in June and September. Is there a process once the contract's expired for getting that data? And also, what's their next step after the contract's over, and how do we take care of them or help them?
Yeah, we by the over the last year of their contract, we meet with them fairly regularly, and we check in with them and ask them what we receive reports from each contractor, and we ask them, what do you want to highlight from these reports? And so we kind of gather and make a aggregation, the word was slipping, of findings from their work from the reports, and then we kind of take that and use that to inform the next round of contracts. Ryan, did you want to?
Yeah, so I'll add. So we meet with them quarterly. We get monthly reports from them throughout the entirety of their contract, right? We get monthly reports, quarterly reports, progress reports, and an annual report each year. In the last year of their contract, the last year we really focus on capturing a lot of data of overall the grant, of how many people they've reached, how many have come to their events, things like that. We also ask them to write their final report on where the work should go. We do have a really great example of a current contractor, CPEN, in our immigrant and refugee statewide contract, that did a great report that kind of really showed us where we should take this next RFP. We also do closing meetings with them, and we ask them, like, how can we do this better as a commission? What worked for you in this grant? What didn't work for you in this grant? And how could we better help this community? And so we do a lot of engagement with our contractors, and we do collect the data as quantitative data as well as qualitative data in that process.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Seeing none, Mariani, do you want to open up the public comment period?
Yes. We have a comment from Stacy. Stacy, go ahead.
I just want to thank the Lester and Ryan for their answers. I think it really shows that they know what they're doing, and that the staff, it's very difficult to have the same requirements or the same measurements for these communities. And I think the commissioners are asking very thoughtful questions about overlap and subpopulations, and I think it's very complicated, but I think those are good questions. But again, I want to thank the staff for understanding that you really need to talk to each of the communities and ask, what's meaningful to them, what works for them, and again, compliments. And it, if I had one of those little, if you let us have those little reactions, I would have just done thumbs up and I don't have to talk. You know how you can do that on a Zoom? Maybe that's not professional and distracting, but I don't know. I would have just done that as they were speaking. So thank you.
You. That was our only public comment.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ryan and Lester. Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6. I do want folks to note how efficiently we're moving through the agenda today, which is great. We will be discussing with this committee and with the public using a decision-making framework that this committee could use to determine which pieces of legislation to recommend for consideration by the full commission. I want to emphasize this is a draft tool. We are presenting it in draft form intentionally because we want and welcome community input. Our goal is to ensure that stakeholders feel comfortable with the final framework and see their perspectives reflected in it. Over the years I've served on the commission, I've consistently heard from stakeholders about their desire for greater transparency in how the commission engages with legislation. This effort is part of our response to that feedback. We are working to create a clear and thoughtful process for evaluating which bills align with the commission's mission, vision, and values, along with our strategic goals. You'll see in the draft framework that the focus is on alignment, impact, and equity, the broader behavioral health landscape, and the value of the commission's position. It is designed to help us assess whether proposed legislation relates directly to the behavioral health or the commission's work, aligns with our strategic priorities, advances equity, and has meaningful funded impacts. Whether the commission's support or opposition would add value. Our committee is proposing that this framework be developed into a fillable form that stakeholders can complete prior to committee meetings. Submissions would go on to our staff, who can review them, meet with stakeholders if needed, and bring a list of legislation back to the committee for discussion and possible recommendation to the full commission. The commission has also created an email address specifically for legislation. As such inquiries, requests, or comments about legislation can be directed to legislation@bhsoac.ca.gov. I would like to open this up for discussion from the commissioners and then with the public. Key questions to consider may be, does this framework reflect the right values and priorities? Is anything important missing or unclear? And how can we make this tool more accessible and equitable? What would help you feel confident using or engaging with this process? We do welcome your feedback and thoughts on this matter. And I might add, on a personal note, my intention with trying to bring this forward is really to create a discipline, not a barrier, as we evaluate different legislation and whether or not the commission's endorsement would be not only of value, but consistent with our mission, vision, and strategic priorities. We obviously would like to support as much as we can, but if we supported everything, I believe our endorsement of certain legislative work would probably be diminished. So therefore, we want to be thoughtful in our approach, disciplined in our approach, and consistent and transparent. Hence the whole decision-making framework that we've provided. So if you'd put up that last, if folks can read that online, you have better eyes than I do. But this is really the framework, a list of questions, whether or not the proposed legislation is in alignment with our mission and vision and values. What are the impacts in equity? And then potential outcomes, whether we endorse, support, or oppose particularly legislative priorities. So I wanted to open this up to our fellow commissioners to provide comment and feedback and input regarding this. Commissioner Cowan?
I do agree with your comment on discipline, and I think we can really have an effective outcome here as we collaborate together. And with the structure here, this is draft structure. I think it's looking pretty positive. Thank you.
Is there other commissioner comment? Commissioner Larson?
I just want to say, and I failed to say it to the last two staff panels that spoke, that like I'm really impressed with all of the work that went into preparing us for this meeting. I think it's part of the reason we're kind of moving more quickly. Like the reason I didn't have much to say about this agenda item, I wouldn't recommend changing anything. You know, I would probably go back to my like, what are our priority populations? What is our charge under the new Prop 1? How are we going to incorporate substance use disorders into our decision-making processes? But I think all of that's, you know, implied and underlying these things. And so I think it looks great. The staff has done a great job kind of setting us up for success.
I would just add that I think it's very good as well. I don't have any additions. I think in terms of how usable the tool is when you make a fill-inable form, if perhaps, you know, you can sort of run it by people to test it, because that, you know, there can be difficulties in the design or the function of those forms that you wouldn't necessarily have noticed in putting it together.
That's good feedback, thank you. Yeah, I think the intent of this framework is if the answer to any of these questions is a no, does not necessarily in and of itself keep it from moving forward for consideration, but it is kind of an opportunity for us to use to contemplate what's before us.
I had another thought. This is our first meeting. This is our first review of this document and these priorities. And I suspect as we start going through actual pieces of legislation, other things are going to arise. And so I guess I just want to be transparent, like with the community, that these will probably change over time and adjust. And that I think we're all committed to doing that in a transparent, open way, you know, with our community members. But that I don't suspect this is going to be the final version of this. It looks great today, but we haven't used it for anything.
Very good. Other commissioner thoughts or comments? Okay. Seeing none. Mariana, do you want to open up public comment?
Yes. We do not currently have any public comment for this item.
Okay. Well, seeing no other commissioner or public comments or questions, I think our initial intent was to take a bit of a roll call from the commissioners, whether or not we would utilize this decision-making framework to consider when we consider legislation. In understanding Commissioner Larson's position, that perhaps we test this out over a period of time, perhaps we forego a particular roll call and we'll implement on an informal basis moving forward. Is that acceptable, Christine? Or do we need to do that? Okay, I'm not clear what I just said, but.
So do we have a commissioner to make a motion to make a recommendation that the committee use this framework?
Your microphone isn't on.
Thank you for the reminder. New to this. So the motion would be to make a recommendation that the committee utilize this flexible living document framework for future decision-making regarding legislation. So do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, yes.
I'll second.
Larson, second. All right. Commissioner Fairweather.
Yes.
Commissioner Larson.
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell. Absent. Commissioner Southard.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas Beckett? Absent. Committee Chair Bontrager?
Yes.
Committee Vice Chair Callan?
Yes.
The recommendation motion passes.
And thank you very much for that. And I do want to express to the public that we still would want to solicit further feedback as individuals actually fill out and complete the fillable form. Would love and welcome feedback as to that experience and if this yields the results we're endeavoring to get. So appreciate all the feedback around this. Moving on to agenda item 7. Just want to again thank all of our commissioners and the public for being here today. This is our inaugural meeting of our committee. Just want to recognize everyone's commitment to being here midday on a Thursday, on Juneteenth, for that matter. This committee was created in response to the real need for greater transparency, collaboration, and strategic focus. We appreciate how everyone has represented themselves today and are here in that effort. Today marks the beginning of that work, and your participation helps lay the foundation for what is to come. We are still finalizing our schedule for the year to come, but we expect to convene again in the upcoming months. Please monitor our website and sign up for our email updates to stay informed about upcoming meetings and opportunities to get involved. With that, I will now adjourn this first meeting. Thank you all for your time, your insights, and commitment. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Could we open up the
Reconvening
line
for
for
public comment, or I mean,
what's
still have quorum maintained?
I vote we listen to the public if it's still possible.
All right, Stacy, your line is open. You can go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just think it would be a good idea if this is going to be a little bit more open, if you have public comment at the end also, because this isn't, before when we had committees and members of the public were actually on the committee, or they were able to interact and speak with the commission and commissioners. It was a little bit more open. The only thing that I had to add that I guess I should have put under legislative priorities was, I'm assuming that budget items are considered in there, but it's not written in, and I don't know if that's clear to people. So that's my only suggestion. Thank you.
Brenda, do you want?
Just making sure my facts are straight. So this is Brenda Graylish. We also have the Budget and Fiscal Committee as well. So that's, I guess it'll depend because sometimes.
Oh, I see. So,
Yep.
and that's good to make that clear, because I thought that budget committee was mainly internal for the budget.
No,
But that's going to be, okay.
Yep.
Thank
And so,
you.
and then we're, as the three committees work together as well, like across committees and stuff. And so TBD, we're figuring all that out in terms of how that will function. But that is the goal, is to have all the work done across the committees to help us be more efficient with our commission meetings.
So if, for example, if I wanted the commission to support a particular budget item, I would take it to that committee, not this committee.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Good question asked. Thanks, Stacy.
I am so glad she asked that question because I would have answered it a very different way. Because advocacy around the budget, I would think would come from this committee, around the state budget.
We have staff coming to help answer. Kendra?
Yes, if it is like a budget request you'd like us to consider supporting that isn't the commission asking for more money, then yes, our committee would do that and write a letter similar to a bill. But if it's something we're working on that the commission has to ask for resources, it would have to go to the budget committee and then maybe our committee too, depending on what it is.
Thank you for that.
So,
Any follow-ups?
so that provides more clarification. This is very selfish, but for example, this year, the California Reducing Disparities Project, which for the new commissioners, you should know that this commission was the body that actually set aside the original funding for that fantastic project. The governors may revise, cut the legs off of that project and was going to end it prematurely. And we were very delighted that most of the, many of the community organizations supported us in asking the legislature to restore that. But I think because there really wasn't time for the commission to consider that, and also you didn't have a committee, but there really wasn't time, so we didn't bring it up before the commission. But in that instance, Kendra, I assume that it would go to this committee then, not the budget committee.
That's correct. Kendra's away from a mic, but she's giving you a thumbs up, Stacy.
Appreciate the question. I'm a firm believer that a budget is really a value statement and it's expression of values. So there's plenty of opportunity, I think, to be an advocate as it relates to budget. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to try to adjourn again and do it officially this time. Thank you.